Welcome to the First Unitarian Universalist Church of Rochester. For more than 150 years, ours has been a congregation of open minds and loving hearts, celebrating many sources of wisdom, many spiritual paths, and many identities. Your faith, your doubts, your questions, your hopes for our world are welcome here. Our doors continue to be closed because our hearts are open, living our values of care and compassion for our community and for the world. You can still join us online for services Sunday, and today we kick off our fall year with our annual water communion with a special event. So today from 11 to noon, you can join us in the lower parking lot here at the church for a drive-through mini service. There'll be a spot to stop and hop out of your car and pour water into our communal bowl, or we'll bring the bowl to your window if you'd like to stay in your car. And as you go through, you can listen to a little music. You can receive a church at home kit that has a chalice, a meditation book, and a journal, and Spirit Kid kits for families. We'll also have offering on a stick where we'll collect for our church, as well as share part of that collection with the Unitarian Universalist Disaster Relief Fund, which has been supporting UUs and others around the country after the wake of hurricanes and wildfires. We invite you to give generously as you are able. And there'll also be the Hawthorne Helps Blue Bin kit for Hawthorne Education Center, specifically asking for pump hand soap, which has been hard to find during this pandemic. So if you're able to drop something off for that, we'd appreciate that generosity. So join us today, 11 to noon, in the lower parking lot, for a safe and a soulful kickoff to our fall. And this fall, we invite you to find some way to stay connected. We'll continue online coffee hours as well after today's special event, so starting again next week, as well as chalice circles, many other small groups. Wednesday forums will return this Wednesday at 6:30. This week, I'm joined by some members of our church, a little panel, speaking about spiritual practices to ground them during this time of staying at home. You can also sign up for a tailgate coffee hour on Sunday starting next week, Sunday, September 20th through the end of October, whenever it's cold. You can see your e-news for this and more information. Most importantly, may you find some way to stay soulfully connected to this church, to your community during this time. We're open. We're here for you. Finally, in the words of the Reverend Eliza Tupper Wilkes, minister of this church in the 1870s, may our faith in humanity and our message of hope and good cheer light our way. It's good to be together.
There's time for adventure and people to treasure and moments that no one can hold. There is so much to see when you're wandering free on this little blue world we call home. There's rivers and canyons and cornfields and badlands and stories that haven't been told. There's thunder and lightning and room for surprise on this little blue world we call home. Home we call home. Horizon, the sun in our eyes, and we'll learn so much more than we know. Songs in our hearts, we will travel the stars in this little blue world we call home. Home we call home. The only one we've ever known. Home we call home, drifting alone on this little
Universalist Church. This is the Church of the Flaming Chalice. This is the Church of Open Minds. This is the Church of Loving Hearts, where friends meet. Right, Joey?
Traditionally, the board installation occurs at the annual meeting in June. This June, Minnesota was still under a stay-at-home order, so the official notices that needed to occur at the annual meeting were handled virtually. The board election results were announced, and the board was welcome to take its seat and begin working. The hope was that we would be able to gather in person at a later date and do this installation in person. In discussions with our regathering committee, it is decided that the water service and our board installation was best handled virtually. And so tonight I have with me a chalice, the sign of our faith, as well as the official board gavel. And I call together this official 2020 board installation. The membership of the First Unitarian Universalist Church has elected us to be responsible for establishing policy and acting as stewards of the business of the church.
In assuming office, each of us accepts delegated responsibility for the spiritual and temporal welfare of the church.
By your actions, you have the power to shape the effectiveness of this congregation in living up to the principles we espouse.
We, the members of the Board of Directors of the First Unitarian Universalist Church, covenant to act as stewards of our church.
We acknowledge and accept the trust placed in us to support and uphold our common mission.
We covenant to join together in supporting the life of this religious community through our active participation and leadership.
Promise to deal forthrightly and honestly with one another. We pledge to keep foremost in our hearts the health and well-being of our church.
We ask for your support. We ask for your trust to represent and lead our church in the time ahead.
May we all travel together in justice and love.
And may you, board, receive this blessing. May you always keep the mission of this church in your heart and in your discernment. May you hold fast the trust invested in you to guide and articulate our mission of being a compassionate and welcoming church to nurture spiritual growth and practice justice. And may the blessings of hope and the power of love guide us all. Amen.
Our small Kutzke Park garden is actually several distinct patches. 6 4-foot square raised beds for vegetables, 4 fenced blueberry bushes that yielded 25 cups of succulent summer fruit that we greedily consumed all by ourselves, only sharing 2 berries with our neighbor. A rain garden that replaced an old tarmac driveway, an assortment of annuals and perennials for cutting, with a small solar fountain in the center. You'll see a picture of that later. It is not a hardship to sit on the screen porch, especially this pandemic summer, and listen to the fountain gently splashing, while often catching sight of a brilliant goldfinch perched on the fountain's edge. One of this summer's home improvement projects was refurbishing the rain garden. Our initial attempt to direct roof runoff worked well, but a decade of freezing and thawing resulted in too much water flowing down to the storm drain. Now, with new river rock spillways leading from downspouts to the catch basin, we are once again capturing the rainwater from the east side of our house and, coincidentally, the west side of our neighbor's roof. Thinking about this capturing of water, whether it is our rain garden this week or in this morning's sacred ritual, has helped me to focus my attention to the wonder of water in our environment, whether the big water of Lake Superior or the small neighborhood creek that wends its way to the Mississippi, to the joy of collecting your water this morning to nourish the plant life and honor our ancestors in our memorial garden, to the beauty of coming together as we begin our church year, even in this pandemic year that will be oddly different. At this important time of ingathering, the Reverend Susan Frederick Gray, president of our Unitarian Universalist Association, shares her thoughts. The practice of gathering, no matter the distance, reminds us that we are connected but by unseen but real threads of care and intention for one another and humanity. It is good to be together.
Communion has always been one of my favorite rituals that we have here at First Unitarian Universalist Church. It makes me happy to know that we are blessing something that is really the essence of life. Today's story is from an Indigenous woman who wrote about how their water and life is really being threatened by some things that are happening in the world right now. We Are Water Protectors, written by Carol Lindstrom, illustrated by Michaela Godi. Water is the first medicine, Nokomis told me. We come from water. It nourished us inside our mother's body as it nourishes us here on Mother Earth. Water is sacred, she said. We stand with our songs and our drums. We are still here. The river's rhythm runs through my veins, runs through my people's veins. My people talk of a black snake that will destroy the land, spoil the water, poison plants and animals, wreck everything in its path. When my people first spoke of the black snake, they foretold that it wouldn't come for many, many years. Now the black snake is here. Its venom burns the land, courses through the water, making it unfit to drink. Take courage. I must keep the black snake away from my village's water. I must rally my people together to stand for the water, to stand for the land, to stand as one against the black snake. We stand with our songs and our drums. We are still here. It will not be easy. We fight for those who cannot fight for themselves, the winged ones, the crawling ones, the four-legged, the two-legged, the plants, the trees, the rivers, and the lakes, the earth. We are all related. Tears like waterfalls stream down, tracks down my face, tracks down my people's faces. Water has its own spirit, Nokomis told me. Water is alive. Water remembers our ancestors who came before us, she said. We stand with our songs and our drums. We are still here. We are stewards of the earth. Our spirits have not been broken. We are water protectors. We stand. The black snake is in for the fight of its life. Water is something that can be renewing and refreshing and really reinvigorating, but not if it's polluted and being taken away from us. So what can we do? Well, we can make sure that people know that water is essential to life and that it's a resource that we all need to live.
morning. It is good to be with you. We are separated by space and time, but we are still together, and we gather in a virtual way as we continue to create a place of communal caring and connection. Be enriched by the virtual presence of each other and draw yourself closer into the heart of love at this time of service and reflection. In this time together, we ask that our minds be open, our hearts welcoming, our arms embracing. We honor all who support us in this caring, loving, and all-inclusive ministry. We send gratitude to Phyllis Beery, serving as our caring coordinator for the last week, arranging care for our members and friends in need. Marianne Hakama will take over tomorrow for the next two, and we thank her for that. The members of our caring committee are wonderful examples of our compassionate community, holding us up as we go through these challenging times. And as we continue through this time of staying at home, many of us may need additional care, whether it be pastoral care, grocery delivery, or an errand run. And we encourage you to reach out to Reverend Luke or myself with that request. We thank all of you who have served our congregation in this way during this time. Today's flowers are shared by Beth and Tony Thompson in celebration of their 17th wedding anniversary. We wish them lots of love and many more. In this community, we make time each week to share pieces of our lives with one another. We do this because each person here has value. Each person's experience matters. We lift up those whose lives are touched by sadness, by illness, by worry, or by loneliness. We revel in those who are celebrating joys in their lives. May their happiness lift us all. May all of us find comfort, hope, joy, and healing strength in this community. Our hearts mourn with Julie Gilkinson. She shares this news. I am grateful that my daughter, Andrea Krause, who grew up in this church, and her family, husband Mark, their son Finn, age 7, and their daughter Skylar, almost 3, are alive and safe after losing their home in Talent, Oregon. Their neighborhood was destroyed by a fast-moving fire that hit Talent and the towns just north of them on Tuesday. I pray they have the strength to carry on and that my grandchildren are resilient. In this unprecedented time, with more bad news than we can imagine, we hold this family in compassion and love and hope for healing through this devastating loss. Please keep them close in your thoughts. And we hold Pat Calvert in our hearts this morning. After spending the last weekend in and out of the hospital, Pat had a placemaker placed on Tuesday and came home the next day. We send healing strength to Pat and send well wishes on a speedy recovery. Cards of support and calls are welcome as she heals. As we have over these last few months, we need to continue to reach out to all in our community to let them know that we are still here and still holding and supporting them. We encourage you all to send cards and make calls to those you love and support local businesses, opening the doors of communication and community. May the faith in the spirit of life, love for the community of earth, and love for the light in each other be ours now and in all the days to come.
I invite you to take a deep breath, breathe deep the breath of life, and remember how precious that is right now. During this pandemic, in the midst of wildfire, so many reasons to cherish this moment, this breath. Find your breath and center down. Feel below you the earth and its ancient turning. Above you the sky and the stars and their ancient light. You held here between. I invite you into this time of meditation, this time of prayer, first by sharing silence and breath together. Spirit of life and source of love, God of 1,000 names and beyond all naming. Sometimes like the water, it is tranquil and serene, and sometimes it rages and can destroy. So too our souls keep going between moments of tranquility and serenity, moments of rage and uncertainty. With the vastness like the ocean, so too are the vastness of our questions, our grief. May we also find an ocean depth of love and possibility in the simple, most common things. And may we send out an ocean depth of love and compassion and care for all those who need to be held, all those in the midst of natural disasters which come from a planet in turmoil. May we all do our part for the healing of the earth and one another. We hold in our hearts all those who suffer in mind, in body, or spirit. I invite you to bring the names you're holding in your own heart, in joy or in sorrow, celebration or concern, and silently or aloud now in this time to speak their names. For all those names and many others, may we be held in love and grace. These words of meditation come from Kim Stafford, Poet Laureate in Oregon. And we hold all those in Oregon and the West Coast in love amidst the fire. She writes, long before the pandemic, the trees knew how to guard one place with roots and with shade. Moss found how to hug a stone for life. Every stream works out how to move in place, staying home even as it flows generously outward, sending bounty far. Now is our time to practice, singing from balconies, sending words of comfort by any courier, kindling our lonesome generosity to shine in all directions like stars. May it be so. Amen.
The first reading is New Water by Sharon Shimmelars. All those years, almost 100, the farm had hard water, hard orange, buckets lined in orange, sink and tub and toilet too, once they got running water. And now, in less than a lifetime, just by changing the well's location, in the same yard, mind you, the water's soft, clear, delicious to drink. All those years to shake your head over. Look how sweet life has become. You can see it in the couple who live here, their calmness as they sit at their table, the beauty as they offer you new water to drink. And from Wendellberry, I was born in a drought year. That summer, my mother waited in the house, enclosed in the sun and the dry, ceaseless wind, for the men to come back in the evenings, bringing water from a distant spring. Veins of leaves ran dry, roots shrank, and all my life I have dreaded the return of that year, sure that it is still somewhere like a dead enemy's soul. Fear of dust in my mouth is always with me, and I am the faithful husband of the rain. I love the water of wells and springs and the taste of roofs in the water of cisterns. I am a dry man whose thirst is praise of clouds and whose mind is something of a cup. My sweetness is to wake in the night after days of dry heat, hearing the rain.
We are living neath the great big dipper. We are washed in the very same rain. We are swimming in the stream together, some in power and some in pain. We can worship the ground we walk on, cherishing the beings we live beside. Loving spirits will live forever. We're all swimming to the other side. I'm alone and I am searching, hungering for answers in my time. I am balanced at the brink of wisdom. I'm impatient to receive a sign. I move forward with my senses open. Imperfection, it be my crime. In humility I will listen. We're all swimming to the other side. On this journey through thoughts and feelings, finding intuition, my head, my heart, I am gathering the truths together. I'm preparing to do my part. All of those who've come before me band together, be my guide. Loving lessons that I will follow. We're all swimming to the other side. When we get there, we'll discover all of the gifts we've been given to share have been with us since life's beginning. We never noticed that they were there. We can balance at the brink of wisdom, never recognizing we've arrived. Loving spirits will live together. We're all swimming to the other side. We are living neath the great big dipper, washed by the very same rain. We are swimming in the stream together, some in power and some in pain. We can worship the ground we walk on, cherishing the beings that we live beside. Loving spirits will live forever. We're all swimming to the other side. Loving spirits will live forever. We're all swimming to the other side.
There is some rust gathering in some of the sinks and the plumbing at church, just a little bit there circling the drain. It's a fairly common thing, especially in combination with old pipes and hard water, more so though it's because of lack of use right now. When I first noticed it in my limited time at the physical church building these days, I felt the sadness of it, the lack of use, the empty spaces that are meant for gathering, the odd and eerie quietness of the building, what should be bustling and busy, almost frenetic this time of year as we kick off our regular year. I remember the good old days back in early March when we struggled with not having enough bathroom space on a Sunday morning or a Wednesday night. But here we are, where the rust gathers at the bottom of a quiet and lonely sink, waiting just waiting to wash hands again. All those years, writes the poet, almost 100, the farm had hard water, hard orange, buckets lined in orange. In the poem, it was a placement of the well, and I wonder how our sources, too, for life and for nourishment have had to shift across the open field of the soul to find new sources elsewhere. It sure feels like 100 years, doesn't it? Or like in the words of Wendell Berry from today, like a drought year for the spirit. As if the soul itself is like some hard, dried grass, parched and cracked, longing for nourishment to swim to the other side. But we get nothing but hard, rusty water, it seems. Growing up, I got to learn a lot about the secret behind-the-scenes realities of liturgical life. Jealous and riveted about this, I'm sure you are. As a weekend janitor in my home church, I was intrigued early on by a drain in the sacristy, which is the little room behind the altar that held all of the altar cloths and the communion ware and the candles. But there, set perfectly in the counter, this little basin, this little drain. It just had a pipe straight through the floor into the ground. It was a drain to nowhere. And while I was not and am not the skilled plumber as others were in my family, I knew that didn't seem right. I learned later it was a drain where you'd pour down the leftover water after a baptism, to have it soak not into the water treatment plant, but directly into the ground, into the earth, right under the church. It seems mysterious, magical, almost, from dust to dust, I suppose. So then I was convinced and intrigued, where did we get the water to begin with? What was the source? So I asked the head custodian. He said, from the tap, Luke. Oh, a little less magical. But maybe not. Maybe that's the reminder that I need right now. Maybe it's a reminder you need right now. That while none of this world is ideal, none of it seems right, and we've got drains going to nowhere, and the water's rusting, and the soul is parched and cracked, maybe we need to stop looking for the larger fixes that cure it all, but find the magic in the ordinary, like rows of gardens. For the time being, maybe the reminder is every little drop of water, no matter its source, no matter its destination, every little drop of nourishment from the most common everyday sources is exactly what we need. To name that is sacred. That water is life. It's all holy, and so too are the parts of our lives that are unused right now. Some of those skills, like social skills, maybe drying up a little bit. But maybe that's so other springs and sources can be found just across the field. Other rivers in the soul that we didn't know we had, of creativity and resilience and possibility, and at the very least, the realization that we need each other. That's why this fall, our focus here at church is how to church at home, to let the water at church rust a bit. We'll clean it up later. To let our hopes for magical fixes go a bit, and to know that we need to look to the common, to some practice, some awareness, some way to hold on to the common everyday miracles like water from the tap to replenish our soul right here, right now, right in front of us. Each year at this annual ritual, this day of the water communion, we normally come in with little containers of water from who knows where. We gather it, we pour some into our memorial garden after the service, right into the earth like that secret drain in the sacristy, honoring and remembering our ancestors. And then we take the excess water and we boil the hell out of it, pun intended, and we save it to use for our baby dedications. And we also used it this past winter solstice, out in the courtyard on December 21st in an old Universalist tradition to put on evergreen branches. You take the water, put it on evergreen branches, and you bless the building with it, or you spray the community with it a little bit. A practice of blessing for a new year. This time we were trying to bless 2020. Apparently that didn't take very well, but after the service, I left the water down in the church kitchen in a container, forgot to label it, and because of someone's diligence in cleaning, it was poured out. Fitting, in retrospect, I suppose. Down the drain it went, that water that was gathered and held and saved. So there was a little left in the container in my office, which now has mingled with some hard, rusty water from the tap just to make sure we had enough. Because I know even if it wasn't planned, hoped for, or expected, the rust itself, well, that's a sign of love. So too the pouring out of the water as someone cared enough to clean up the kitchen. So too the ways we have reimagined and reinvented the world we anticipated. To be surprised by all those places that maybe now we can see a blessing in. There at the bottom of the quiet sink that's waiting for your hands to be washed again, there at the bottom is just a little bit of dark orange, the rust of love circling the drain.
The water communion ritual began in Unitarian Universalism in the 1980s when two women, Carolyn McDade and Lucille Schoch, were preparing for a national convention of women and religion. They wrote, "Water is more than simply a metaphor. It is elemental and primary, calling forth feelings of awe and reverence, acknowledging that the ocean is considered by many to be a place from which all life on our planet came. It is the womb of life. We now realize that the water communion ritual was for us a new story of creation and empowerment."
Today, as we gather online and those who are able to join us in the lower parking lot, we invite you to find some water. Maybe water that you've collected from somewhere else. Maybe from your tap or garden hose or puddle, and either pour it into our communal bowl today or to a bowl at home or wash your hands with it. And remember these sources of water, of landscape, of people or feeling that nourishes your soul. From Mary Oliver. I don't know who God is exactly, but I'll tell you this. I was sitting in the river named Clarion on a water-splashed stone, and all afternoon I listened to the voices of the river talking. And slowly, very slowly, it became clear to me what they were saying. Said the river, I am part of holiness. And I too, said the stone. And I too, whispered the moss beneath the water. Said the river, imagine everything you can imagine. And then keep going.
This poem we are sharing today as we pour the water is from Kendra Ford, entitled Be Like Water.
We pour water to remember our children, as they wash their hands and help create art, as they learn their stories and practices of our people. As we pour,
be like water, run deep, run clear.
We pour to remember the generosity of water that nourishes, and the generosity of each other that nourishes this church. As we pour, be like water, fill any space to its own dimensions.
We pour to remember the connection of all things, all waters and people, and how we keep connected, finding our way as we go together. As we pour, be like water, respond to the moon, to gravity.
We pour to remember that we are made of water, so too we are made of song, keeping songs alive in our own hearts. As we pour, be like water, change colors with the light, hold your temperature longer than the surrounding air.
We pour to remember the vibrancy of life water brings, and the nourishment it brings to young minds imagining their own spiritual path. As we pour, be like water, roar and trickle, go underground.
We pour to remember how music, like water, holds us together. In joy, in grief, to give us harmonies to hold us. As we pour, be like water, bend light. Be the one thing people need even when they're fasting.
We pour to remember the care of our buildings and grounds, the wildlife in this habitat, and the rust in the toilet, waiting for us to return so that life within and without these walls may flourish. As we pour, be like water, eat boulders quietly.
We pour to remember the food and drink delivered to each other, the hands washed in care, and the tears shed in compassion for each other. As we pour, be like water, be a universal solvent.
From Alice Walker. Water is always only itself. It does not belong to any of these containers, though it creates them. And so it is with you. We pour this water, and as we gather it, east from the Zumbro, Mississippi and Atlantic, south from the Root River, the Rio Grande, the Caribbean, north from Cascade Creek, Lake Superior, and the Arctic, west from Salem Creek, the Missouri, the Pacific. We gather it in from every and any source. As we pour, we will bless the graves of our dead, bless the lives of our children, because water is life. There's a river flowing in my soul. There's a river flowing in my soul, and it's telling me that I'm somebody. There's a river flowing in my soul. Amen.
Thank you.